Hello and happy Friday to you. I am so glad that you could join us. Today, I am thrilled to have a conversation with you. I am Sadia Davis, the director for the Center for Creative Entrepreneurship. And one of the things that we've realized in the midst of not only this pandemic, but with a lot of social unrest and individuals who are literally taking to the streets to be able to share their voice, we decided to create a three-part series, how the creative industries are a catalyst for change. So last week, we were fortunate to have music with, incredible leadership in music talking about how they demonstrate through work and through their sponsorship, companies that are demonstrating social justice, really. And so today, I'm thrilled that we're going to talk to our theater community. So the Center for Creative Entrepreneurship is wonderfully sponsored by the Coleman Foundation. And we are so happy to have Arts Alliance Illinois as our fiscal sponsor. Thanks to 2112, we recently launched the Center for Creative Entrepreneurship as the educational and nonprofit arm of the largest creative co-working space and creative incubator in the world. And as you know, I love to say that. So today, I really wanted to talk to theater leadership, and I'd love to introduce you to Deb Clapp. Deb Clapp is just amazing and joined the League of Chicago Theaters as the executive director in July of 2008. During Deb's tenure, the League has increased its membership and its scope of programming and raised the visibility of Chicago theater. Prior to her work with the League, Deb worked as a consultant for Chicago theater companies such as Teatro Vista, Theater with a View, About Face Theater Company, and Chicago Children's Theater. From 2002 to 2007, Deb was the director of management for the Goodman Theater, where she oversaw all operations and negotiated and executed contracts. Please welcome Deb Clapp to our talk today. Hey, Deb.
Hey, Sadia. Thanks for having me.
You know, it's such a pleasure to have you. I know with all of what's happened with COVID and theater specifically being impacted, right, with people not being able to go to the theater, talk to us a little bit about what's been going on and how you're doing.
Well, I'm doing okay. It's a really tough situation. We have no idea when we're going to go back to work, so that makes it very difficult for all of our theaters. As I think everybody knows, a few theaters have already closed. Mostly commercial operations because they're 100% dependent on earned income, so very difficult for them to stay alive during this time. And it's just really tough for everybody. I think it's from stagehands to box office personnel to actors. There are just so many people who are out of work, and the people who are still working are just trying to keep it together.
Wow, you know, it's such an interesting time because I think, maybe it was a month ago, we touched base and you were explaining that those who give to theater are still giving.
Yes.
Which was amazing to hear, but it does touch my heart to hear that there are theaters that are not able to survive this.
Yeah, and it's getting tougher. The longer it goes on, the tougher it gets. But we do have, I think, particularly in Chicago, we have a base of incredibly generous philanthropists who understand the situation and are continuing to give. And that makes it, it's not easy for anybody to survive, but it makes it a little bit easier for some of the nonprofits to at least hang on.
Right. Speaking of that, and I think, if you could talk to us a little bit about, I know what the League does, and ultimately, those who are in the business of theater, I think one of the reasons why I wanted to have this conversation briefly with you before we bring up our other guest is to kind of help those who either are in the industry or have a desire, whether it's a playwright, right? And understanding these structural elements. Like you mentioned, that commercial operations primarily rely on that earned revenue. And so have there been any discussions around innovating or thoughts on, you know, how to either stream performances or anything like that?
Yeah, there have been a lot of conversations around that. I think and many of our theaters have started streaming, and many theaters are streaming not just shows but educational programs, conversations like this one, all sorts of things to really try to keep audiences engaged in not just in theater, but also in the all of the issues that we're all dealing with right now. I think it's really important for theater to stay a part of their communities in that way. And I think many people are doing that. And there are, I think people are, you know, it's really hard to think about, well, how can we do it? How can we do it innovatively and still stay within the current restrictions that are on theater? I think that's a sticking place, but beyond streaming, right? We're trying to get people to the theater, to the live theater is just really, that's something that we have yet to overcome, how we can do that safely for our audiences and for our artists and for our staffs. That's just been kind of an insurmountable problem for a lot of people.
Well, you know, I would say that, you know, your tenure with the League of Chicago Theaters has been impressive. And one of the things that I always love to sort of note is where a person sort of the journey. And so one of the things in 1996, you moved to the Long Wharf Theater in New Haven, where as manager, you oversaw a day-to-day operation in theater of over $5 million in an annual budget. Speaking to that, we're all looking at just surviving now, right? I know when we bring up Collaboration, they've been very diverse and agile in where they produce their productions, like whether it's in a park or whether it's in a on a stage. So I look forward to hearing how they're sort of navigating this space. In fact, do you have any, before we bring up Dr. Marcus, do you have anything that you'd like to share directly to our audience that might be in some way encouraging, sort of understanding the landscape of all the theaters that you work with, and any insights?
Yeah, sure. First of all, shout out to Collaboration. I think they're one of the theaters that has been doing really great work during the pandemic, really keeping it going, not letting up. So they've been doing a really fantastic job. In terms of what I can share with the audience, you know, well, here's what I can say. We will be back. Good. Theater will be back, and it will be back in Chicago. It will be better than ever. And I think, you know, in terms of insights, I think that there is a lot of creativity happening, a lot of, you know, because of everything that's also happening in the world, I think that there are a lot of things that are going to be changing about theater in the best way possible when we come back. So I'm really looking forward to how we look and how we behave and how we change as we move into this new. It's going to be an entirely new world when we come back. I really believe that.
Well, I like your enthusiasm, Deb, so I'm going to ride in on that. In fact, let's talk to Dr. Marcus Robinson. He is a transformational leader in the fields of nonprofit management, talent management, corporate culture, and diversity with inclusion. He is a seasoned nonprofit executive who is adept at project leadership, strategic planning, fundraising, we all need that, and leading change that delivers on the vision, mission, and purpose of the organization. Dr. Marcus now serves as the executive director of Collaboration Theater Company, which was established in which I'm sorry, which he's been with since August of 2017. Collaboration uses devised theater as a venue for social change and community transformation. Dr. Marcus, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So you hear what we're talking about. And one of the things that I've seen is the kind of work that Collaboration is doing amidst the pandemic. Can you talk to us a little bit about not only the vision, but how are you navigating the current situation?
Got it. So our vision really calls us to do docudrama, real life work around the issues of oppression writ large. But we talk about, racism, sexism, otherism of any type, that we're trying to help people see the issues from a unique kind of position, and then have the opportunity to talk about it. So we're big on the community conversation after the show kind of thing. So that's what we do normally pre-pandemic. Now we're shut down like everybody else. So we have gone what we call transdisciplinary, where we are doing work, educational work and conversational work like this show, on a streaming platform. We call it the Together Network. And really what it allows us to do is to commission artists and makers, theater makers, to come on the show, talk about issues, and talk about issues of the day, talk about the issues of art making in this day, and then give the audience a chance to kind of have dialogue with them. So we're on the platform just like you, and trying to keep it alive and keep going. As Deb said, we're leaning into it.
Yeah, well, one of the things that I first became very aware of with Collaboration's work is the amount of various types of writers, the types of productions. In fact, the first production I became aware of was, I don't remember the title, but it had to do with the amount of violence that was going on in Chicago. This may have been like in 2015, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
But one of the things that was so mind-blowing to me is that the theater goes into other communities, right? So for example, I got on the train with the entire company and we took the train to the west side. Then we walked, right? It was like a procession. It was beautiful. We get the community involved. I should say Collaboration gets the community involved. Then we walk to a park where there is a stage and a production is put on. And it was one of those things where this was an environment that, number one, the community was not used to people coming in like that, right? Number two, the performance was so incredible, and it really was touching because it was in an environment that typically there's violence. And there was no violence on that day. So talk to us a little bit about where you decide to stage some of your plays, because it's a unique formula that Collaboration has.
Well, we like to be in the communities that are most underserved by, traditional mainstream theater, by pretty much everybody for that matter. And so, and going into a space like the one you talked about at a park, that we would call that positive loitering, where we would invite the entire community to come and kind of take over a space that would be normally used for other activities that you wouldn't want to have happen, and put great theater that is actually written by artists who live in those neighborhoods and in that part of the city, telling stories that are relevant to the to folks who are going to follow us to the park to see that show. So they see themselves reflected in the art, is written by their friends and family, people in neighborhoods in the neighborhood, and it is wrapped in this bow of theater that's supported by this fabulous theater community here in Chicago that Deb has the pleasure of leading the league around, and we all just come together and we make great art about real stories, about real people, things that happen, but not just to tell the story, but to then have the community talk with each other, talk talk with us, talk with the artists to say, you know, how is it that what can we do to make this better? And people walk away kind of, you know, activated a little bit around doing the one little small thing that when they do it, it makes the world that much better. And we think an accumulation of micro affections, cool stuff.
Yeah.
that enriches the culture. That changes the world in a very small way. So that's a piece of what we do.
That's really brilliant. And I know that Collaboration, much like Looking Glass Theater, also has a post-show talk, which, like you said, engages the community in a wonderful dialogue. Let me ask Deb, are there any other theater companies, and this is not to put you on the spot, but I'm just curious for those of us out there, like I'm familiar with Collaboration, but I would love to know more about other theater companies that are out there that are doing a little bit more experimental theater. One moment. Go ahead, Deb. Let's.
Another one.
I'm sorry about that. Deb will come back with us. We just have her mic. Go ahead, Deb.
There it is. Yeah.
Okay. One of the ones that comes immediately to mind is Water People Theater. They've been streaming some of their own work, also creating new work. They are also, they're doing a festival right now. They're doing and they're having such a huge presence online. I'm really, really impressed by their work. And of course, you know, everybody's doing impressive work right now, but Water People is one of the ones that I've been really happy to see. You know, and with this streaming, I know, for instance, Court Theater, they announced their season for next year, and they announced for their first show, you're actually able to buy an in-person ticket or a ticket for streaming. So that if people decide that they're not comfortable in coming to the theater yet, and of course this isn't until, I think it's in February that they're planning to start, but if people decide they're not comfortable coming to the theater, they can still buy a ticket and they can watch it from home. I think that's a really wonderful idea as well. So there are people all over doing things that I think are really creative.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm glad you mentioned that because you know, this platform is an answer to COVID. The fact that the Center for Creative Entrepreneurship at 2112, we have a theater. We can host up to 150 people. We would normally have you on a panel with a full audience. Speaking of which, we don't want our other guests to be audience, but I want to show a little bit of Dr. Marcus's work with Collaboration. But yeah, this is something that has been an answer to our current situation. And going back, when we do fully go back, to your point, Deb, we will be utilizing both streaming with a real physical audience and our Sling. So we're all figuring out ways to stay relevant, but also bring the creative industry and that which we are working in. In this case, we're talking about theater today. How do we remain agile and still produce great work? So let's take a look at Dr. Marcus Robinson's work with Collaboration.
Collaboration. Theater for social change in Chicago.
Collaboration brings Chicagoans together to create the city we all deserve through our Theater for Social Change methodology. How do we do that?
1, we produce work by artists from communities that have been excluded by the vaunted Chicago theater industry, and we deliver it in those communities.
For our 23rd season, we are producing all of our main stage shows at the 300-seat Performing Arts Center at Kennedy King College in Inglewood.
2, we pair collaboration designers with authentic voices from the community in a way that delivers high production values and unforgettable experiences.
Thanks to our sponsorship from AV Chicago and our skill design team, Collaboration creates theatrical environments that allow audiences to connect deeply to the work.
I saw communities coming together, talking to each other, talking about life.
3, After each performance, we make space for deep dialogue that we call crucial conversations about the themes of the work and how it affects us individually and as a community.
Continue to go out there and spread that message to the kids in the neighborhoods. They really need you.
4, change starts within. So our work is geared towards activating self-reflection that leads to a change in attitude and behavior.
And 5, we use media of all types to raise awareness and create a deeper understanding about Chicago's history, present, and future, so that we can grow towards a city full of peace, love, and equity.
Each and every one of you, right? Whether you know it or not, or whether you like it or not, you all have an example to set. I want you to wake up every day, rising up, asking yourself, what kind of example am I leading myself with? Before I can lead what?
Collaboration, theater for social change in Chicago.
We are each other's business.
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 Yes, we are. Yes, we are.
Oh, I'm so happy for the work that you're doing. And speaking of which, one of our next guests is in that intro and often works with Collaboration. J. Nicole Brooks is a native Chicagoan with roots in the North Lawndale and Washington Park neighborhoods. Brooks is an author, director, actor, educator, gremlin at times, Taurus, and social justice warrior. Stage plays penned by Brooks include Black Diamond, The Year the Locusts Have Eaten, Federa, Queen of Haiti, Hella, that was amazing, and her Looking Glasses version, Her Honor, Jane Byrne. Let me restate that. She wrote Her Honor, Jane Byrne. And it was the last production before COVID hit that Looking Glass put up. A long-term ensemble member with the Tony Award-winning Looking Glass Theater Company, Brooks also works with artistic collectives throughout America, including New York, Portland, and Los Angeles. Brooks is the recent recipient of an Andrew Mellon Foundation Playwright Award and has been recognized for 2 productions by the Kilroy List. On the screen, yes, you can see her. She will appear in the highly anticipated Candyman, Say My Name, directed by Nia DaCosta and produced by Jordan Peele. Brooks has had reoccurring roles on The Chi, South Side, and will appear opposite Chris Rock in season 4 of Fargo. Now, before any theater can happen, we also need the producer involved. Linda Karn, a successful entrepreneur and a seasoned mentor. Linda spent the bulk of her career in the financial service industry. Now, after selling her equity compliance firm to a Fortune 500 company in 2006, she left the financial services field to pursue ventures that touch her heart. Her debut film, producing edits, or credit, was the Emmy Award-winning documentary, Matt Shepard is a Friend of Mine. And she followed that with Happy Jail, a Netflix original documentary series. These projects were produced by her company and found as she is a founding member, HeartCom. HeartCom has also several projects in the pipeline, but I have to tell you, as a Broadway new producer, Linda's first foray into Broadway is producing as a co-producer, Mrs. Doubtfire, which because of pandemic has been put on hold, but she also sponsored several plays in Chicago, one of which happens to be the Looking Glass production of Jane Byrne, which was written and directed by Nick Brooks. Please allow these lovely ladies to join us in this conversation. Hello, hello, hello.
Oh, hey.
I got sound just in the nick of time.
Oh, good. Well, that sound is important because your voice matters. So Nick Brooks, J. Nicole Brooks, as she is professionally known, I'd love to refer to you in this moment as Nick. Talk to us a little bit of about how you are feeling. One, I think it's important to check in with people because we are in the middle of a pandemic. We don't know who's going through what or who's lost someone to this deadly virus. But talk to us about a little bit about how you're doing and what's keeping you going, because you do a lot.
Well, peace, everybody. Thank you so much for holding space on this platform. I have deep and meaningful relationships with everyone here and growing relationships too. So this is a great time to be had. The short answer is I am holding strong. Since COVID closed down our nation, it's opened up my mind and my heart to places that I didn't quite know I would ever visit. And so with that, my focus is sort of just making sure that my my mental health is intact. I do all that I can to keep my physicality and my physical body intact as well. Writing has not been the easiest thing. I tend to be a writer that I'm very fortunate to have projects in development. So first, let me start there. Just because you're a writer doesn't always mean that you have the opportunity or the nurturing or the support. So I don't take that for granted, especially when institutions and individuals aren't able to support folks like they know. And it's especially difficult when you are a freelance artist. But for me, a little bit every day is the best way that I know how to go at it. So there are days that I stand in front of the computer for 12 hours and I get to write one stage direction. Now I lament that one funky little stage direction and often go and beat myself up. But, after I'm done cussing myself out, I have to wrap myself up in love and say, hey, this is okay. All you have to do is keep going. So that's how I'm doing. And I'm just taking it day to day.
Yeah, well, after Collaboraction's video said, we are your business, or I'm like, now
we are each other's business. That's right. The great Gwendolyn Brooks. She taught us that. That's right.
That's right. That's right. Well, welcome, Linda. Thank you so much for taking time to be with us today.
Thank you, dear.
Yeah. So talk to us a little briefly about how you're doing and what's going on, and then we'll get into this greater conversation.
I'm doing well now. I think everybody was in a bit of shock at the beginning. I was talking with my daughter a couple of weeks ago saying, I barely remember March, April, and May.
Yeah.
It's kind of a blur at this point. And then I had 2 surgeries on my feet. And then my 90-year-old mother had a fall and hip replacement surgery. And as these things go, they fall in the middle of the night, not during the day. So it's surprising. I mean, it did change the color of my hair. It was black before we got that 2 a.m. call. No, I'm lying. I was born with this hair color. But I think it's given us all time to, as a producer, I was in theater from a very young age and then got into the financial world. So as a producer later in life, I have the gift of time to do things that touch my heart. And that's why I love supporting J. Nicole Brooks. Not only is she a brilliant playwright, but Nick Brooks is a remarkable woman. So I support everything she does with all my heart. And Collaboration, I love what they do. And I support as many theater companies in Chicago as I can. As a producer, it's 2 different worlds. Most theater that you support or produce in Chicago, it's really a sponsorship because they're nonprofits. But it comes from the heart, and I try to support organizations that not only feed my soul and that I can connect with, but I believe can connect with the greater good of humanity. And with the pandemic, we're seeing the very best of us and the very worst of us. And I'm hoping that it's also pushing those who are on the border to become more active, and it galvanizes the human community to take care of all humans. My mother's always said, it's all of us or none of us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up, because one of the reasons why we started this 3-part series is that, you know, it was like, I don't know that I can talk about marketing or financial literacy while people are, you know, fighting to survive on the streets, or with all of the racial tension, right? And so when we look at the creative industries, we want to make sure that now's the time these conversations are happening, where people are becoming more aware of how they can demonstrate inclusion and diversity, right? So not just speaking about it. So to your point, Linda, absolutely, like, it's about the fact that we're all humans, but at the same time, so many of us, and those, you know, whether it's Black people, everybody's saying Black and brown, marginalized communities, or just underserved in general, who have less resources, how can we shine a light on new narratives, making sure that theater companies are choosing more people of color to tell stories? Obviously, one can say, well, all of you are demonstrating it, right? Which is fantastic. I wanted you to be able to be here to show that there are people and theater companies that are demonstrating this kind of change that we want to see. Nick, jumping over to you real quick, because I've had the pleasure of seeing some of your productions and understanding just the vision is broad. Can you talk to us a little bit about, I'm going to tag one, Hella, because often we don't see productions around little children, but if you could just talk to us a little bit about, yeah, I know, she's smiling, I'm smiling in my heart.
So Gila is inspired by the life of Henrietta Lacks. And for me, as a writer, I try to let my subjects organically come to me. And for me, the experience was that in 2016, I had a major operation on my reproductive organs. And so when you are weeks in recovery, and you know, the incision is at your core. So when your core has an operation, it slows you down. And the great thing, though it's painful and, you know, it's not fun to go through it, it sharpened my vision as a storyteller, and it led me to really create from a place of how can I help to advocate health-wise, and how can I, especially for women or folks with reproductive, you know, parts, and also I wanted to address medical apartheid. So the play essentially is about medical apartheid. It is about astronomy. It's about cancer. It's about Jim Crow politics, and it's all a children's story. It's dark. There's a lot of cussing in it. And it's adults drinking and drugging and talking smack to each other. But for me, that is the experience that many children have. I think the children are the mightiest warriors we have on this planet. This miserable pale blue dot with all of these militias and forces and organization and it's these shorties, these kids that survive and move forward. And we, everyone on this panel, we are proof of that. And so I wanted to write a children's story. And so Gila takes place on Earth. It takes place in outer space, because for me, I wanted to know, where could Black people be safe? And the only answer I had was in outer space. And also I like to operate under the model of, if we're going to figure out where we're going, you absolutely have to look back at the past. Obviously, that's not something that I'm not the author, invent anything, but that is just a part of the rich tradition, especially in West African folklore. So all of that goes into a play, and I took it to Sideshow Theater Company, and I was very fortunate to have generous support from the likes of Linda Karn, as well as Melinda and Duncan Kime. Everybody put their hands on the deck, and that's how we ended up getting that baby little play out to the world.
Well, forgive me, I was calling it something else, but it's Gila. And as I
Gila, yes. Just so you know, it's in medically speaking. A lot of people say hella, and I'm like, I get it. I shout out to Oakland, okay? Because they say hella. I get it.
I'm from the Bay. So
it's a hella dope play. But just so you know, medically speaking, Gila is you take the first two initials of Henrietta and Lax, her last name, so they take he and la, and so that's the gene that they use to work with in science.
Fantastic. Well, and I also hear healing in there, which is beautiful. So thank you. On that, it makes me think about, Dr. Marcus, how do you guys choose your productions, right?
Yeah. Well, we have containers. We call them that. All right. So one of the containers is a thing we call Peace Book. And what we do with that container is we reach out into the community of playwrights, artists, activists, and others that are interested in telling stories, singing stories, dancing stories, and ask them to create a small piece, 7 minutes or less, and that could be presented on our stages. And folks from all over the city will submit. We'll get as many as 200 or 300 submissions that we'll have to find a way to select it down to 18 to 21 of those things to actually submit. And so that kind of theater festival idea is a major mechanism for us reaching into the community with this open source curation of new pieces. And we might do that Peace Book in the fall, and then we have a winter festival that's where we try to do pieces that are a little longer in length, 12 minutes to half an hour, and some full-length stuff, and allow people to, again, from all over the community, bring new stories, new tales to the table, and by submissions. So this open source submission, reaching into mainstream artist communities, but also into the neighborhoods from folks you ordinarily wouldn't expect to have to make a theater piece. We even took a fine artist photographer and used her story around her piece of art to render the art on stage, working with Tanika Lewis Johnson and the Folded Map Project as an example. So that's how we do it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. It's really brilliant to hear how you do it, because to see to hear Nick talk about her production, to know that you guys actually collaborated recently, right? Nick, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. Shout out to Collaboration. Many folks that I love and adore and will until this world blows up. I was just sitting here listening to you, Dr. Marcus, and one of the things that I love about the way Collaboration sources material in order to put forth is that it actually is very much in the Chicago tradition. If you just take two folks like Studs Terkel, Studs was just one of the best at simply sitting and listening and talking to people. And the other one is Nelson Algren. Nelson hung out in all of the bars. You go up and down west on Madison, and he talked to the so-called the folks that are lower in society, the druggies and the drunks and the prostitutes and all of those things. And he got their stories. And so I think that is the best way to know, A, what's happening in these communities, and B, to know what the need is for the people. Because yes, you can come up with plays that are fantastical or that are historical based or just like from elsewhere. But there's nothing like finding out what is happening on the minds and hearts of people that's living in the zip codes in this city. So collaboration is really great in that way. Because of collaboration, I was able to meet this wonderful rapper who turned to a playwright. Shout out to Willie Round. Whereas if I had gone on other platforms, it may have been a little less likely, perhaps, maybe not, I don't know. But I just know I met this young blood through collaboration. So finding out what people are struggling with or finding out what gives them joy, I think is playmakers. That's our job to present that. Because it ain't all just sad, we out here having some joy now, and we want to, we want to bring that to the front as well.
Great. Well, thank you for sharing that, Nick. I want to.
Sadia, can I add something here?
Please, because I was going to ask
as
you
a producer.
There,
something I'd like. I truly believe is what Deb said, in that theater is going to come back stronger than ever when it's back safely, because I think especially the Chicago theater community is so strong, and they're going through growing, changing, looking at ourselves, reimagining ourselves, reimagining our communities, reimagining our structures, reimagining our stories. And I believe this time is a time things are shifting, shaking out. And when we come back, I truly believe it's going to be better than ever.
Well, I'm glad that you said that, Linda, because the next question I was going to ask was to you or to Deb or really to Dr. Marcus. When we're talking about equity in pay, I don't know how productions are chosen. Is there equity in how a writer or a director is paid? Is it based on seniority, reputation? Can you guys talk to us a little bit about that from the business side, on the financial side of equity?
I can talk to it a little bit. I think it depends on what theater you're working with, what that kind of equity looks like. And I think that there are certainly some theaters, particularly at the smaller level, where it is everyone is essentially paid the same thing for working on a show. And then as you sort of move through, smaller to mid-sized to larger theaters, it's based on different things. And sometimes it is based on numbers of shows that you've done at that particular theater. So if you're an actor or a playwright or a director who's worked, several times at a theater, that relationship is, I think, more valuable to the theater. And so that person's going to get a little bit more. A lot of times these things are governed by unions. And so people are, a lot of theaters can only afford to pay scale. And I think that I think we actually have a lot of work to do around equity and, both on the creative side and on the administrative side. So I think there is some work to be done there, but I think that many theaters are paying what they can afford. So many of us are very much hand to mouth, and that really limits what we can pay. So the big takeaway here: more money for theater.
Well, Deb, I'm glad you brought up the union, right? Because with regards to whether the size of the theater or not, that could potentially be a regulating body, right? To make sure that there is pay equity, but then it becomes a question of who gets hired, right? And that, Dr. Marcus, if you want to speak on that, but everybody's heads are nodding. And so I think that, as I mentioned, you guys are all working in such a way that you're demonstrating this. So it's not that we're preaching to the choir, it's more sharing this information to those maybe who are just not aware, right? Or maybe who could learn to be more inclusive or how to do that, because there is so much talent. And we know that there's so much talent out there. And we have on today's talk a writer, well, actor, writer, author. Nick, do you produce too?
Yes. In fact, I'm in the middle of producing something for online content. Yes.
Right. So some of us are in a position to make it all happen. That's another show. J. Nicole Brooks will have you on to talk about, no, seriously, like the business. The thing about the Center for Creative Entrepreneurship is that we provide educational workshops, boot camps, you name it, conferences, pre-COVID. But after COVID, post-COVID, we mentioned that we are now having to dual streaming versus, the webinar and then in person. But how do we deliver information for individuals who are creating a company around these arts? And with an actor or a writer or an author, I almost said an author. But, it's like, how do you create that business model? One of the things I'll address on this is you came from the financial world, right? And into the sort of the nonprofit heart space. Are there any tips or any ideas that you would like to give to our creative industry, specifically those in theater?
Well, nonprofit basically means you're going to be losing money, actually, in a lot of my cases. It's donating. It's understanding. I've done television, I've done film, I've produced theater, and they're all very different. And producing for a for-profit show and a nonprofit, it's all very different. And I'd say the most important thing is find a mentor. Find somebody who you can trust to teach you. And there's a lot to learn. And it is a business because we want to keep doing this. And we need people to donate their time and their money. And we want it to be successful so you can do more. But it is a business.
Yeah, speak to a little bit around the difference, if you will, between producing let's say, one of your Netflix or one of your TV versus theater. And I understand that one's for profit and one's not for profit. But
if you're lucky.
Let me clarify.
Hopefully not for profit, right?
So I want to clarify that what I understand for theater producing is that you've got to know that you might take a loss, right? So it's more of a donation that you might not get the funding on the other side. And maybe because I'm thinking of Broadway, so I could be wrong on how it was explained to me. And you mentioned earlier, Linda, the difference between Chicago being a sponsorship as opposed to in New York. So maybe you could just speak to a little bit.
Well, it's a difference between a nonprofit organization and a for-profit.
Okay.
And when you organize a show, I'm sure nonprofits, when I sponsor shows, I don't know all the intricacies of their financial, requirements because there's staff and all kinds of other things. But for the shows that I produce for theater that are hopefully for profit, you have to look at how much money it's going to cost, renting the theater, from programs, that equity, how many equity actors, non-equity actors. There are certain rules you have to follow for equity, and there's certain costs there. And you do your best to figure out what your costs are going to be first, and then can you raise the money? And you base it on the number of shows, what percentage of the theater do you think you can fill? And it's a gamble. And it's the same with a film or a TV show, but it depends upon, for Happy Jail, the documentary series that we did, we raised the money to get it to a certain stage, and then sold it to Netflix. And they brought in the finishing money, but we did all the producing of it. And it can be very different for every single project you do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm glad, thank you for sharing that, because, you know, so many people don't always understand the back end process, right? We go to the theater, we experience it, it's amazing. But one of the reasons why I wanted to have each one of you on today is you each represent an element of the process. Dr. Marcus, would you like to say something about that?
Yeah, I'd like to speak to the nonprofit theater part of it, and like what our role is, you know. So we're in like the $500,000, $1 million range. So we're not too small, but we're not really large. And so we think our role is to create spaces for making sure that artists and designers and administrators, people who work on this stuff, have the opportunity to earn living wage money for the part-time jobs that they they get when they do these things. Because our theater, no one makes a home in our theater and thinks that they're gonna stay there for the entire career. This is a way station along the way. You can catch a ride with us, and it'll take you so far. So in our model, we've based all of our pay around an $18 to $20 an hour actual pay rate for a number of hours we think that the job that we're asking you to do takes, and then we kind of try to true that up to okay, so if we want a designer to work on this thing and it's going to take a month of their time, well, then we need to have about a month's worth of money if we want them to do that thing, or very, very close to it, knowing that they're going to be supplementing with other things. So we might buy 20 hours a week from you for 4 weeks at $18 an hour, and then you got to go figure out how you make the other part of your world work. And by doing that for each role, no matter which one you are, even me as executive director is based on that same $18. I just get more hours, to do my job versus a lighting person that might get only 24 hours for the whole job, right? And I get 45, 50 hours for my week of work. So, but it's still the same rate. So we egalitarian that way. And then the idea is to make sure that all the designers get the right amount of pay, and those that need support actually have the right amount of support people, so that designers don't do technical stuff or expect it, like a costume designer doesn't also have to stitch sew the thing together and stuff. So you have to make sure all those things. So we try to line those things up, and it costs a little more in the aggregate to do it. But we're all struggling and trying to, don't call it starving artists for nothing. So we're all struggling to do this wonderful thing we call making theater. So to the extent that we can make what we do fit into a formula for somebody's life actually working for them and making art, which is a privilege. My God, to make a living in doing art, theater, oh my God, this is like Mecca. So if we can be like a 25% or 15% or 10%, or in some cases half of your income, great. We want to do that. And so that's the kind of thinking that goes into our pay modeling, which is to say, try to be as equitable as possible, and make sure people are getting the right amount of support. And even with all that, we still make mistakes, we still get mad, and we never really reach the pinnacle of what we're trying to get, but we strive.
But that's what's behind the curtain, right? So, speaking of behind the curtain, I just want to give J. Nicole Brooks an opportunity to talk to us a little bit about Jane Byrne, because I love that the productions that you do have historical reference. And, the pandemic really just halted a lot of tours, music, theater, our industries halted. And that was such an incredible piece to lift. You want to talk to us a little bit about that?
Sure. I'd also like to just quickly, I'm going to smash in a couple of responses to, this is a really great conversation. One, I'd just like to say that the nonprofit theater model does not work. It is problematic, and we have to take this moment to see how we can restructure it. And there are a lot of people that are doing that. So I just want to recognize and give a shout out there. Like, for instance, we will never go back to unpaid interns. Like, if you are a human in the theater, you deserve fair, equitable pay. And there are some non-profit organizations that are multi-million, and they're still not paying people an equitable, fair wage. So the fair wage campaign is really big right now, and COVID is really helping us to sharpen our eyes. And I just want to, before I get to Jane Byrne, I just want to say that the arts make up 4.2% of the GDP. All right, so we create over $877 billion annually to the United States economy. So if there is going to be any sort of full American recovery, it cannot happen without the artist sector. Okay, you can't go bailing out these airplanes while they selling the middle seats and all of this mess that they're doing, and then leave us in the wind. I dare you to. All right. So I just wanted to get that in there, that you have to blow up all of the senators, and you have got to say to them, the arts and culture sector, we're not just sitting up here making paper dolls. And even if we are, we still deserve that money. So run your pockets now.
Nick, say that number again, please, Miss Brooks. Could you say the GDP? I really want
4.2%. 4.2%. All right, that's 877 billion. So talk to Dick Durbin, okay? Run it. Talk to all of these senators, because they got the time, and so do you. Talk to them. Let them know that we absolutely have to have, like, Senate has to act immediately.
Well, one of the things that I want to draw before you go on, just one key point, is that because of COVID, the halt of industries, nobody's working. And so we have become very sensitive to making sure that everybody gets paid. So I think that it has been a natural progression of, with the Center for Creative Entrepreneurship, normally our panels were $10 to $15, which they will have to be some amount of money, but through this pandemic, nobody was making any money. So we were like, this information we want to provide for free. But going forward, we make sure that every single person gets paid. So I appreciate you bringing that up. And I think because everybody was sat down, it will encourage every organization. I'm talking about across all organizations, no more free internships. Yeah, you got to
no more.
You got to pay.
She's back there.
Yeah. Talk to us about Our Honor Jane Byrne.
So Her Honor Jane Byrne is a part of what we are now calling the Lost Season. Shout out to everyone that had a production that had to get canceled or delayed due to COVID. Everyone with my production, Her Honor Jane Byrne, which I have the honor to write and direct at Looking Glass Theater Company. It ran for 3 days. After a really beautiful opening. We opened on a Sunday and we had to close on a Thursday, and everyone was like, oh, we're gonna come back. But I knew immediately that there was no coming back, because we could see what this virus was doing across the world. But the other thing of this virus is that it is robbing us of our ability to. Art is really about imitating life. And sometimes people don't have the capacity, or they don't have the courage to, let's say, go to a protest, or they may not want to engage in a conversation with someone. They may not want to go to that town hall, but they might go see a play, and they might learn something about, for instance, Jane Byrne, who was Chicago's first female mayor. And that isn't always taught in the history books, especially the cycle of Chicago mayors that have, that you can go way, way back. I personally, as an author, I'm a history nerd, and I have a vested interest in Chicago history, because there's so much pain and corruption and hilarity, if you ask me. I just like to put it on the page. So the fact that Her Honor Jane Byrne was a play that lasted for a very short period, what I'm most proud of is the journey of all of these folks, from the actors to the crew to folks that donated. Everyone locked arms to put this thing up, and 3 school groups got to see this production. So a lot of audience members didn't see it, but 3 groups of babies got to see it. And for me, that makes me so happy. So moving forward, if you want to see more stories, I think we all have the power to roll up our sleeves and say that, you know, the arts is not some frivolous thing, that it is vital, especially now with all of this civil unrest. I promise you, artists are the most dangerous because we can get in any and everywhere. So let us in.
Shoot, you can put it in the music, you can put it in the plays, you can put it in the visual art.
That's right.
She can rap it.
Artists can snatch down statues of Confederates and fascists. Artists can do anything. So, you know.
You know, the arts really, I'm so fortunate to be able to be a part of an organization that not only offers resources, but provides a platform for creatives to sharpen their toolkit or add more tools to the toolkit, whether that's financial literacy or marketing, or what can we do to help you build your business and your brand better so that you can have sustainable success. That's all very important. But to your point, Nick, is that we also need to make sure that we are being properly funded and properly supported. So thank you so much for saying that. And I have to say to everyone who has participated today, whether you are on our panel or whether you are a viewer, whether you're watching this at a later date, we archive all of these talks on our YouTube page, the Center for Creative Entrepreneurship. It's a heartfelt thank you. Thank you so much, Deb Clapp, for being an advisor to the Center for Creative Entrepreneurship. Thank you, Dr. Marcus Robinson, and please thank Anthony and the whole collaboration team, including Sandra Delgado, by the way, who was in your video, Deb. And thank you, Linda Karn.
Oh, you're welcome.
All of your support, and you know, to producers out there who are supporting art and who are supporting our creatives. We can't do this work without you. So thank you so much for being an advocate for our work and supporting it with your valuable dollars that we want to make sure that that's clear. Those are dollars that are going behind.
Cha-ching, cha-ching.
Cha-ching. Without this kind of work can't be possible, including the Center for Creative Entrepreneurship. And J. Nicole Brooks, let me say it again. J. Nicole Brooks, don't stumble. Thank you so much, lovely, for all of the work that you put out and for your powerful acting and roles that you portray on The Chi. And I can't wait to see Candyman, which, by the way, part of which we got a call to shoot the rest of the pickups out at 2112 at The Hangar, you know, because we have a studio out there too. So thank you so much. It's all connected. Stay connected. Be kind to one another. Take care of each other, because we are all each other's business.
That's right.
All right, you guys have a great weekend.
You too.
Thank you for having us.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
So thank you so much to our guest. I am so happy to have brought this very valuable conversation to you around how the creative industries are catalysts for change. Join us next week where we invite some music professionals on a talk that's scoring versus sourcing. This is a valuable conversation that we will have with a couple of producers, music composers who score for film, TV, and commercials, videos, and with a music library. Where do people source music for licensing? So join us next Friday at 2 p.m. The following week, we will finish up this 3-part series on how the creative industries are catalysts for change with the visual arts. I will say the visual arts are getting it done. They are doing something a little different. So be sure to mark your calendars for August 8th for that. And in the meantime, enjoy your weekend. Thank you so much for our generous support from the Coleman Foundation, from Arts Alliance Illinois as our fiscal sponsor, for 2112 for creating the Center for Creative Entrepreneurship, and our interns who are operating in the background. Gabrielle from Columbia, going into her senior year. You did great today. Thank you to Vera, a recent graduate from DePaul University, who is our intern, and the controller. I call her the air traffic controller for the organization, and Wayne P. Tate for your brilliance and your beautiful flyers that are going out and getting everybody informed about what we're doing. You guys have a great weekend. Thank you so much.